When the world was shivering under tyranny, one voice roared back with defiance. Winston Churchill didn't just lead a nation, he embodied resistance. This is the rise of Britain's bulldog in its darkest hour. Born into privilege yet often underestimated, Churchill zigzagged through party politics. His early career was a roller coaster of triumphs and failures, until destiny summoned him to stand alone. From 1929 to 1939, Churchill was exiled from power, his warnings about Hitler dismissed as alarmist. In that political wilderness, he labored in silence, waiting for a moment that would define him forever. May 1940, France had fallen, Britain stood alone, and defeat loomed. Churchill walked into Parliament with these immortal words: "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." It was not merely speech, it was a lifeline to a broken nation. Churchill understood that when bombs fall, words must rise. His speeches were more than rhetoric. They became the backbone of British courage, binding an atomized nation into an unbreakable spirit. When the Blitz raged across London, Churchill wasn't just a commander. He was one of them. He drank with citizens in bomb pubs, refusing shelter underground. He stood on rooftops as the bombs flew, proving that leaders must walk in the same fire they lit. Churchill knew Britain couldn't fight alone. He struck a pact with Franklin D. Roosevelt over transatlantic cables into joint strategy rooms. Across the ocean, Britain's war cry reached new ears, forging an alliance that reshaped history. Even before the guns fell silent, Churchill foresaw a new looming divide. His 1946 speech coined the chilling term, Iron Curtain. The seeds of the Cold War were sown from the ashes of victory, as Churchill warned of shadows rising once again. In August 1940, Britain stood alone under the Blitz, the relentless bombing campaigns of Nazi Germany. Yet Churchill's defiance was unwavering. He flew over bombing raids, inspected destroyed neighborhoods, and visited bomb shelters. His famous words immortalized the Royal Air Force. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. In that moment, the words became more than speech. They became legend. Churchill's speeches were his weapon when guns ran silent. The timing of his pauses, the resonance of his cadence, the solemn truth in his words, he turned oratory into artillery. In "We Shall Fight on the Beaches," he crafted a rhythm that felt like a rallying cry, not just for soldiers, but for a nation ready to resist. We shall fight, stronger, fiercer, together. By June 1940, France had fallen. The world watched as Britain stood isolated, battered, but defiant. Churchill rallied Parliament. If the empire lasts 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour. He transformed despair into duty, fear into fortitude, planting a seed that would bloom into victory. Churchill knew survival meant more than isolation. His bond with Franklin D. Roosevelt gave Britain a lifeline. Through secret telegrams, U.S. support, and shared resolve, Britain stood firmer. The Atlantic Charter emerged not just as policy, but as promise. Long before the guns fell silent, Churchill recognized a new shadow descending: communism. At Fulton in 1946, he warned of an Iron Curtain across Europe, marking the ideological divide that defined the Cold War. His foresight echoed across years, proof that his vision was not just past, but prophetic. May 1945. Peace returned, but the cost was horrifying. Churchill stood before a jubilant crowd, yet victory tasted bittersweet. Europe lay in ruins. Millions were gone. Yet hope had triumphed. On VE Day, amid celebrations, Churchill reminded a grateful nation. Resilience demands remembrance. After his wartime fame, Churchill faced defeat in 1945, but he wasn't done. In 1951, amidst rising Cold War tensions, he was re-elected as Prime Minister. This second term wasn't about war. It was about rebuilding, navigating international crises, and preserving Britain's place on the world stage. As Prime Minister again, Churchill championed the Commonwealth amid the coronation of Elizabeth II in 1953. He chaired the Commonwealth Summit and addressed global flashpoints, like the Suez and the Korean conflict, asserting leadership even in declining empire. Even legends bear shadows. Churchill's views on colonial matters and his role in the Bengal famine remain deeply contested. While some see him as the guardian against tyranny, others highlight the imperialistic policies that inflicted suffering. His legacy is complex, hero to some, flawed to others. For over a decade, his death had been anticipated and meticulously planned. Operation Hope Not was the code name for Churchill's state funeral arrangements. These plans were drafted long before his passing, reflecting the nation's recognition of his stature. Operation Hope Not, the code name quietly prepared since the late 1950s, was now becoming reality. Churchill himself had a hand in shaping it, long before his passing. Now 5 decades of careful planning would unfold under a somber sky as Britain prepared to bid farewell to its greatest wartime leader. On January 30th, 1965, Britain held its breath. Big Ben chimed solemnly as a 90-gun salute echoed through Hyde Park, one shot for each year of Churchill's life. His body lay in state at Westminster Hall for 3 days, where over 300,000 people filed past in hushed reverence. London streets became a silent procession. 1 million Londoners lined the route, braving freezing weather and unbroken quiet. Flags flew at half-mast, shops closed, yet the cemetery-bound funeral train would remain one of the most watched events in history. From St. Paul's Cathedral, Churchill's coffin was taken aboard the launch Havengor and brought along the Thames. Dock workers respectfully dipped their cranes. A fleet of RAF jets roared overhead. In that haunting moment, Britain paid tribute not with words but with unified reverence. Next, a specially prepared locomotive, the Winston Churchill, carried the coffin from Waterloo Station to Blaydon. Silent crowds stood along the 60-mile route. Veterans saluted, and the nation watched as Churchill returned to rest beside his family, near where his story began. And so, the story of Winston Churchill is not just about one man's fight against the tides of history. It's about the courage to rise when the world expects you to fall, the resilience to keep moving forward when everything seems lost, and the determination to speak the truth even when your voice trembles. Churchill once said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." These words remind us that greatness is not about never falling, but about refusing to stay down. If this story inspired you, don't let it end here. Carry the spirit of perseverance into your own life. The battles you face may not be on the world stage, but they matter just as much to your story. If you want to discover more untold stories of leaders, legends, and the forgotten moments that shaped history, then make sure to subscribe to our channel right now. And remember to hit the like button if you believe Churchill's journey can still teach us how to stand tall in the darkest hours. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell, because our next video might just uncover another chapter of history you've never heard before. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. This is not just history, it's a lesson for every one of us, and the journey continues together.